spoke about the three different parties involved in this transition here. And so the next party that we're talking about is the adult children that are, or a child that's going to take over the company. So what do we do with him or her? How does that guy play in?
Well, yeah, there's a number of things that need to be transitioned. Anytime you're transitioning any kind of business, whether it's a farm business or a regular business, and I always say there's three things you transition. One is you're transitioning the work ethic, and so in many cases, I grew up on a family farm in Saskatchewan, and so the family farm, you're taught to work pretty early in life. You transition that work ethic pretty early in life. In many cases, that young children are working in their family's business doing something. So you're transitioning that work ethic. The next thing you're transitioning is you're actually transitioning the business itself. So how do we do that? So that's where we need the accountant and the lawyers figuring out how do we transition that business on, because we can transition, we can give shares away, but there's tax liabilities in doing that. A company might, a child might set up a company on their own, and their own company will buy shares back from mom and dad. So there's a number of ways to do it. We have to figure out what it is mom and dad are trying to accomplish, what they want to accomplish as a family, and then figure out what the optimal structure will be. So that's the last transition. And then the final transition is, or the thing we transition is the excess wealth. And so how do we transition wealth to the non-business kids? And so the challenging thing with a lot of business families is that most of the wealth is tied up in one asset. That one asset has to do three things: support mom and dad in retirement, support the child or children coming to the business, but also recognize the non-business kids. So it takes some work to figure all that out.
Okay. And then in that third party, the adult children that are not participating in the business, then how do you recognize them? What does that even mean?
Yeah, there's a number of ways. I've seen families that say we just don't have the capacities to recognize those kids at all. It's entirely up to the family. There's no such thing as a right or a wrong way to do it. Some families say, well, I'm giving a $10 million business or transitioning a $10 million business to my business child. Therefore, I should be giving $10 million of value to my non-business child. Well, that's not fair either, because the $10 million, the child running the business has to work the business and keep it successful. The child receiving $10 million of extra value doesn't have to work that asset to generate income from it. So the question is what assets do we have outside of the business that mom and dad aren't going to need in their retirement? And we can transition ultimately onto the kids. That might be a family cottage or a vacation property in the States or what have you. It might be residual value of RSPs or cash outside the business that mom and dad don't need. But in many cases, we need that value from mom and dad. So we can't give that away until mom and dad are gone. Right. Where insurance often comes into play is we can take an insurance policy and use corporate money to create another asset, a non-business asset. But we can buy that insurance inside the company. So the company pays for it, the company is the beneficiary of the policy, and then we can get that out to the non-business kids using various methods. So that will be part of their inheritance.
Right. And then could they get that today, or you have to wait until mom and dad are not here anymore?
In order to get the insurance benefit, the ultimate benefit, you have to wait until mom or dad or both of them die, depending on how you structure it. But in the meantime, the company may be able to use that asset for business use as well.
Right.
So that asset is now sitting inside the company. You simply moved after-tax income inside the insurance policy. The insurance policy has two components. It has an insurance benefit. It has a cash value, and that cash value can be used as equity to borrow against. So the business can borrow against that insurance and then reinvest it back into the company, and we have tax deductions and so on from doing that.
Okay. And then, so as far as an advanced case consultant, if this is happening, right, we've got the family and there's a business transition, when do you get brought in, and how does somebody know, okay, well, now I need your expertise?
Yeah, Laurent, I'm in many cases, I'm brought in right at the front end. So an advisor like you or other advisors that I work with, a lot of times I'll get an email or a call and say, Chris, I've got this family. I've approached them about the idea of doing some transition planning. Here's what I know about the family. So the advisor will tell me what they know about the family, what sort of planning has been done to this point. I'll ask them questions about organizational structure, family dynamics, who's in the family.
Do they like each other?
Do they like each other? When do mom and dad expect to retire? Is there disagreement between mom and dad as to what that goal should be? So I'll ask lots and lots of questions about the business and the family. And if we don't have those answers today, then I'll ask you to go back and get those answers.
Right.
And then the next time we come back, and now I've got all the information. So based on the assessment, after we've assessed that information, then I'll be able to provide some guidance as to what step we take from there. So in many cases now, do they have a will? Do they have a shareholder agreement? It's surprising how many high net worth people don't even have a will.
Yeah.
They don't have a will, they die intestate. So all of a sudden now it's the courts in whatever province you happen to live in, they decide who gets your assets. So there's a lot of moving parts. So I really act as kind of a guide and provide insight as to what the process should look like and what tools you would use. My expertise is in insurance, but there's lots of other tools we use here. We make sure the will is properly done. We make sure shareholder agreements are properly done. We might do a reorganization of the corporate structure. We use trusts in many cases. Holding companies might be done. So there's a number of different pieces that we use. The insurance is just one piece.
Right. And I know that, depending on the family dynamic, depending on if you're allowed to talk about this, if you're allowed to bring this up at the dinner table, or some people are very open about it and some people really are not.
Yeah.
When does somebody start to have this conversation? Is it, okay, I want to retire tomorrow, let's just do it? Or is this something like, how far in advance should we be trying to do this?
Yeah, it's funny. A fly note here yesterday, I was reading an article on the family that second wealthiest person in the world, next to Elon Musk, and he's and I can't remember, he's a Frenchman.
Arnaud.
That's Arnaud.
LVMH.
He's owed $200 billion.
Yeah. He owns everything.
And it's interesting to read the article because the kids talked about sitting at the dinner table, the breakfast table, and they said it was like getting an MBA in their own home.
Right.
Arnaud was training his kids to understand the business, and he knew that one day he'd have to succeed it to his children. He's got 5 kids.
Yeah.
So now all those kids have executive roles in the various forms parts of the company. And so he started at a very early age. So I think anytime you're in a business, if you're in a successful business, you're often thinking now, or you should be thinking, where's this going to go from here? Is this a business we're looking to sell at some point and cash out? Because if you're going to cash out, that's great. Now you have cash. So you'll know how much of that cash you'll need for your own consumption and how much you can give away. And there's ways to maximize that. If the business is a type of business like Arnaud's business, that business is not going anywhere. Once he dies, I think he's 70 some years old now. But that business is not going anywhere. So now he's really thought for many decades about how does he make sure that business stays in place,
right,
and all his kids are benefiting. So so to answer your question, it's not something I think most business owners, and it makes sense, most business owners, you have your head down and you're doing what you do best. You're working in your business, you're making money, you're growing your wealth, but sometimes you have to poke your head up and say, okay, where are we going from here? And let's make sure we have that, we're on track to get it is where we're going to go.
Yeah, it's I don't know if you've looked up the website of what they own, lvmh.com.
Yeah, Chanel and Louis Vuitton and
70 others.
Yes,
yeah, they own everything.
They own 100. They employ 96,000 people worldwide.
Yeah,
so it's a massive organization.
And they own the distribution as well. So they own Sephora, they own all their perfumes and all the makeup and stuff. But then they also own like DFS, which is the duty free stores, the airports.
Yeah.
They manufacture it, they market it, they sell it, they own the stores that you sell it in, and it's a fantastic business. And luxury jewelry, luxury liquor.
Oh yeah.
Anyways, we're way.
So they have this. He has the same issues that every other business has in terms of family transition. It's just the scale is much greater.
Right.
And the complexity is much greater just because of the size.
And the microscope.
That's exactly right. And a public company is primarily run by a family, an individual family.
Yeah.
So most businesses are not that kind of business, not that size or scale. But the issues are exactly the same. If he wants to retire, he's going to have no trouble finding income in retirement.
Right.
But now, how do you transition that on? He's got 5 children. They all have executive roles. So I think anytime if you have a business, which children do you think have the capacity and the ability to run your business? And I think a lot of kids would say, hey, do you want mom and dad's business when they retire? A lot of kids would say, well, yes, I want the business because it's very valuable. But do I want to do that business? And I use that with farming situation, is that there's a difference between the kids that want the farm and the kids that want to farm. Right. And so do they want to farm? Do they want to do what you've been doing and what you've been building all those years? And that's the kid that you target to transition that business to. The other kids, you have to trim the family tree. They can't be part of the business. But does that mean we don't recognize them at all? We should probably recognize them to some extent so we have to maintain some family harmony. Most families are not happy to see one kid get all the wealth and the other kids walk away with nothing.
Yeah. Well, and then when it comes to the estate, it has to be, there has to be like an even distribution, right? Like
An even distribution or a fair distribution, or however that's defined, Laurent. Like it, and everybody defines that differently. I've seen situations where one situation I can think of when I was working with a farm family in Manitoba, and the farm was the circumstances were very challenging. But mom and dad said to the two girls who weren't going to be part of the farm, the farm will give you a university education, and the boys take over the farm. But once you've got your education, that's the end of the obligation of the farm. And that was their decision, and everybody knew that.
Okay. Yeah, it's super interesting. And right now too, this time period where you're having like the end of the baby boomer retirement and then the beginning of the baby boomer expiry, I guess. And a lot of those businesses are not being transitioned or were never thought of to be transitioned. Yeah. So maybe they're being transitioned badly and causing problems versus causing happiness.
Well, the statistics show that 25% of Canadian business owners that are 50 plus years old do not expect to transition the business to their kids, which is surprising to me. Most of them, half of them, expect to sell out at some point, sell to a third party or a competitor or a supplier or what have you. When you look at the farming community, 75% of the farming community expects to transition to the next generation. So it's just a different business. The culture is different. So if you're not looking, that's always the first question: is where's this business going? Is it staying in the family? Because if it's staying in the family, we have to figure out how it's going to do that, and how we recognize non-business kids, how you retire, and that can all be done. We just have to figure that out. If it's going to be cashed out, then that's great, because you're just converting your business assets into cash. And now we spend that cash in our retirement, then we transition the rest of it on to our kids and grandkids, and there's tax effective ways to do that.